Hi guys, welcome back to the Bearded Broskies. I'm Chris. I'm going to be flying solo for these Game of Thrones videos until Mike joins me when Season 7 goes live. Today I'm going to be doing the breakdown for you for the new trailer of Game of Thrones Season 7. Pretty pumped up for this. I'm a huge fan of the show. It's my favorite show on TV. I just feel like it's feature quality every episode. It's got great casting, great writing, and it's just the best thing that's on TV in my opinion. So I'm going to be doing the breakdown on the trailer for you, how I feel like the season's going to unfold, and I'm going to give you some of my predictions on where I think the characters are going to end up, either this season or by the end of the show. So stick around and let's get started with it. So the trailer starts with Cersei walking towards the courtyard of the Red Keep, listing off all the enemies in the realm. To the east is Dany and the Unsullied, to the west is Theon and Yara, it looks like in their fleet, to the south would obviously be the Dorne and possibly Highgarden invading from the south, and to the north would be Jon Snow. We get a nice overhead shot of her standing on a massive map of Westeros, and she's standing around where the twins are, or what they call the Neck, which is where the south ends and the north begins. After Jon Snow was crowned king of the north, everything above the Neck is now his kingdom. The funny thing about all this is Cersei's not even worried. She's got the whole realm invading her and she doesn't even care. She's clearly talking to Jaime and she just tells him that they're going to destroy all their enemies. It doesn't matter how many they have. And we've got a nice panning shot actually of the Lannister army marching off to war in unison, which looks really cool. Something big's going down. We pick up in the throne room and she's staring daggers right through some emissary of some sort. Now there's been some argument. I've heard some people say that this is maybe Euron Greyjoy coming to like offer the fleet up to help her because Yara and Theon stole most of the boats. It's really the only ally she has left in Westeros. But I don't think so. I think this is a guy from the Iron Bank. I think this is a banker coming to collect on the crown's debts. Because if you remember correctly, the crown stopped paying the debts to Bravos, and that's why Stannis and Davos went over there. And the Iron Bank actually funded Stannis, because the Lannisters weren't paying him. And if that wasn't bad enough, the only saving grace she has was she sent Mace Tyrell over there to negotiate for her on behalf of the crown. And then she ended up blowing up in the Sept of Baelor with everybody else. So I guess negotiations are off. So that's my best bet. I think this is a Bravosi from the Iron Bank coming to collect payment, and she's clearly not impressed with him. So Daenerys and Tyrion finally land in Westeros after 6 long seasons. She's here. She's made it. They land on the shores of Dragonstone, which is the ancestral home of House Targaryen. She claims the throne there. We get a nice shot of her kneeling down in the sand. I think for her this is a big moment. She's been chasing this dream for so long. A part of her probably never thought that it was going to happen, and now she's here. And just like Cersei at the beginning of the show when she was walking through the courtyard listing off her enemies in the realm, walking towards her giant map, they panned over the huge carved table at Dragonstone, which is a map of Westeros that Aegon the Conqueror had carved when he landed. And it's obviously from Dany's point of view, and she's looking over the map and she's seeing like where her enemies are and probably drawing up all her battle plans for her invasion. So what I gathered from the trailer, it looks like Daenerys has split her army up. She's sent the Unsullied, to the best of my mind, with Theon and Yara, and they are attacking Lannisport or maybe Castle Rock itself. Given by the trailer, all we see is a large Lannister symbol above a gate and Lannister soldiers defending. Those are the two biggest targets over there, so I would assume that's what she's done there. And it looks like that the Dothraki are invading. I would guess through the Stormlands into the Crownlands on their way to King's Landing. Now, what Cersei doesn't know is Jon Snow could really care less about her at this point. His only concern is with the army of the dead and the Night King. Of course, Littlefinger's up there in Winterfell still trying to manipulate Sansa for his own benefits. Looks like we're going back to the wall again this season. The gate opens and somebody's obviously going north. Then we see a band of wildlings running away. Clearly the Night King is on the move, and they're huddled together for one last stand, ready to fight some unseen enemy. At some point in the trailer, we do see Jon running north in wildling clothing, so this very well could be his group. Now, there has been leaked photos online of Jon Snow and Davos negotiating with Daenerys and Tyrion on a beach. I can assume this is Dragonstone. So when you actually hear Davos speaking in the trailer, that is most likely him and Jon have gone to, seek the help of Dany and try to convince her to come north and fight the real threat, which isn't Cersei. If you remember, Stannis has a word with Sam in the library, and Sam tells him the dragon glass kills the White Walkers, and Stannis is like, oh, well, Dragonstone's full of dragon glass. So that could also be another motivation for them to go down to Dragonstone to maybe bring this dragon glass back. And of course, if you want somebody to negotiate for you, you have to bring Davos. If you remember, he negotiated for Stannis for the Iron Bank. It wasn't until he spoke up that they got what they wanted. He's very good at getting his point across to people, and they really see, his need, and it seems to work out for him. He also negotiated for Sansa and Jon with Lady Mormont, and he was the deciding factor that got her to help them with the Boltons in the last season. So I think this is once again Davos approaching Daenerys, pleading for help, and he basically tells her, when everybody's dead, it doesn't really matter what skeleton sits on the Iron Throne, to really hammer the nail in and make her see the point. And if you remember in season 2, Dany, when she's at the House of the Undying, she's actually walking through a shattered Red Keep where everything's snowing and everything's dead and lifeless in there. So she probably at that point didn't really know what that meant. So maybe now hearing it from obviously Davos and probably Jon telling them that there's an army of the dead invading from the north, and they're going to sweep over all of Westeros if she doesn't help. She's probably thinking, hey, maybe this prophecy might, or this vision, actually has some weight to it. And she probably now, it's on some level, probably believes them. So whether or not Dany listens to them, I guess we'll have to see as the season unfolds. But the end of the trailer ends with Drogon flying over top, leading the charge of Dothraki across an open field of battle. Now this made me think of season 1 right away. It clicked with me, because there's a nice scene in season 1 where Dany asked Jorah if the Dothraki could take over Westeros, and Jorah said as long as King Robert isn't fool enough to meet them in open field. And then once again, when Cersei and Robert in season 1 are talking in that intimate moment, which is actually one of my favorite scenes.
Say Viserys Targaryen lands with 40,000 Dothraki screamers at his back. We hole up in our castles. Wise move. Only a fool would meet the Dothraki in an open field.
So this kind of just goes to show you the arrogance with Cersei, because clearly she's meeting them in an open field because they're not fighting themselves. So she's not listening, and I mean, she should. So those were kind of the recap of all the big moments that happened in the trailer. Now I'm going to break down all the little side characters and people you only got to see briefly, and kind of tell you what I think's going on with those characters as well. So I'm going to start off with everybody's favorite little assassin, Arya Stark. We last saw Arya at the Twins, killing Walder Frey at the end of last season, which was one of my favorite parts of the finale. Now, to me, I think she's going north. I think she's going to meet up with Jon and Sansa. It makes sense. She's already at the Twins. It's pretty close for her to just go north. It's also getting colder and colder in every scene that she's in, so I know everyone's rooting for her to kill Cersei this season, but I just don't think it's happening. I think she's going north. There's nothing there that indicates to me that she's going south at all, because if anything, it's just getting cold and cold and cold. So next would be Theon and Yara. Theon doesn't look like he's having a very good time in this one. It looks like he's on a ship that's burning. Later on in the trailer, you actually see that there's a battle going on between other Ironborn soldiers. Clearly his uncle Euron has found them and his fleet's intercepted them. Yara apparently looks like she's having a better time. You can see her with Illyria Sand making out a bit. So I don't know if maybe they split up and, Theon took the fleet that they had and Yara maybe went with the Dornish. I don't know. We'll have to see. So unfortunately, we don't get to see much of Tyrion in this trailer. Briefly with him and Dany on the shore at Dragonstone, and then him overlooking the cliffs as the dragons fly up. But if you slow down the scene at the end, I believe this is Tyrion knocking over the wooden lion on the battle plans. If this is Tyrion knocking over the lion, which I think it is, it makes perfect sense to me. Who better to devise battle plans of invading Lannisport or Castle Rock than Tyrion? He grew up there. He'd know the best place to land an army and invade, and clearly the Unsullied have landed and have attacked. So we might get to see Tyrion in Castle Rock this season. Wouldn't that be great? We only see Melisandre in this one scene in the trailer. She's back at Dragonstone, which makes sense. It's the only other place she's ever known since she's been in Westeros. She's looking down over the cliffs at Dany, Tyrion, Jon, and Davos, I can only assume, as they walk the battlements when Jon and Davos arrive. It makes sense that she's there. She's still trying to serve Jon Snow since she believes he's Azor Ahai reborn and the prince that was promised. And she probably saw him in the fires and where he was heading, so she just beat them there. Davos swore to kill her if she came north again, but he didn't say anything about Dragonstone. Which leads me to Jaime. He didn't really say anything during this trailer, but to me his face spoke volumes. At the end of season 6, he locked eyes with Cersei during her coronation when she was being crowned queen, and he just didn't look happy with her. He looked pretty irate. He probably didn't agree with what she's done. She kind of single-handedly has turned the entire realm against him, and now it's going to be left up to him. She's going to turn to him to have to fix this and fight her wars for her, and it's just probably something he didn't really want to deal with. They already had so many problems, and this is just one more thing that she's thrown on for him. Now, a lot of people have said that they think that Jaime's going to end up killing Cersei in the end. Other people argue it's going to be Tyrion. I actually think that the people who think it's Jaime, I think it's probably going to be Jaime. If you read the books, they touch on it in the show a little bit, but the prophecy with Maggie the Frog. In the show, they reference that all three of her children are going to die, and gold will be their shrouds. But they don't really touch on the other part of the prophecy. And in the books, it says that Cersei's actually going to be killed by her younger brother, which you always assume is Tyrion because they have so much hatred for each other. But actually, Jaime was born after Cersei, even though they were twins. She came out first. He was born afterwards, and she makes a reference to him holding her foot as they came out. So technically, Jaime's her little brother. And I think just with the animosity between them and all the dumb things she does, and she's getting crazier and crazier, and their relationship is actually really rocky. I think Cersei's going to put Jaime in a situation like the Mad King did, where she's going to ask him to do something that's just completely against, how far he's willing to go and push his moral boundaries. And I think he's going to end up assassinating her just like he did King Aerys, and then maybe he'll end up killing himself and they'll end up dying together because they made that promise to each other when they were children that they came into the world together, they'll leave it together. So that's probably my prediction of what's going to happen with Jaime in the rest of the seasons to come. And who can forget the creepy hand coming through the door? Now at first I thought this was Septa Unella, as after the mountain had tortured her a bit, but as I look closer, I don't think that's a female hand. That looks like a male hand to me, and a left hand at that, and that's the hand that Jorah Mormont got a grayscale on. So I actually think this is Jorah in some sort of quarantine. He's locked up and his grayscale is getting clearly worse. The mountain got a makeover this season since Cersei has denounced the faith and made her own Queen's Guard. And if you look close enough, she's remodeled the throne room as well, replacing the 7-pointed Star of the Faith with the Lannister Lion. And Missandei and Grey Worm are making babies, it seems. Which leads me back to Winterfell with Peter Baelish, Littlefinger. Jon's throwing him up against the wall in the crypts. Now this could either be because, maybe he's caught him plotting, trying to turn Sansa against him. But I actually think this is more on the lines of, I think Baelish has told Jon who his mom and his dad are. And Jon's not taking the news very well, thinks he's lying. Remember in the 5th season, Sansa and him are in the crypts, and Sansa tells him about her Aunt Lyanna. Littlefinger remains quiet through this, and the look on his face leads us to believe that he knows a little bit more about the situation than she does, but he's not at liberty to tell her at this point. Which would make sense because of Peter Baelish's mass spies and informants that he has. Surely he's gained some knowledge over the years of what really happened at the Tower of Joy, and the fact that he was actually at the tournament with Rhaegar when he won and rode past his wife to Lyanna and declared her the Queen of Love and Beauty, laying a blue winter rose in her lap. I think Littlefinger might place the seed in Jon's mind, but I think Bran will be the one to make Jon believe it. And if and when these two meet up in the next season. Bran's actually the only character that they didn't really feature in the trailer, even though he's one of the most powerful characters probably in the whole series. He was last seen at the wall being escorted by Benjen Stark. Clearly he's going to reunite with Jon since he's already so close to the wall. There's not really any more trekking through the woods for him and Mira. I think he needs to find Jon. He knows the truth about the Night King and the White Walkers and their origins. So, I mean, he's probably the best weapon they have against them, just his knowledge and the fact that he's the most powerful warg ever to have lived. I believe that Bran's actually going to warg into the dragons, and I think that's pretty much the only way you're going to be able to kill the White Walkers is with the dragons. And I think Bran's going to be a huge part of that. So I think that's what you're going to be looking forward to with Bran in the next season. So that was my breakdown and predictions for what's going on in Season 7 of Game of Thrones based on the trailer. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And leave me some comments down below in the section. I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones. It's pretty much my obsession. I love talking about it. So, I mean, if you want to discuss with me what you think is going to happen based on what I said, argue it, like it, hate it, just let me know and I'll get back to you. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Chris with the Bearded Broskies, and we'll see you next time.